to this last and 14th lecture in our program on the modern novel. In this last and final lecture, I am going to talk to you about some of the characters of Heart of Darkness and some of the symbols used in the novel. So we start first with the characters. Of course, we start with the main one, Marlowe. He appears in several of Conrad's work. Marlowe is a character not just in Heart of Darkness, he is also a character in other works by Joseph Conrad. He is, of course, a complicated character, and in a way he anticipates the figures of high modernism. We find him someone who sits at, in 1900. He's sitting between Victorian culture behind him and the culture of modernism in front of him. So he is a character that reflects the contradictions of that time, reflects the complexity of that time, and anticipates the figure of high modernism while also reflecting his Victorian predecessors. Marlowe, in so many ways, is a traditional hero. He's tough, honest, he's an independent thinker, he thinks for himself. He's also a capable man, he works hard, he can sit and repair a ship on his own for 2 months or 3 months. Yet he's also broken. He's broken or damaged. He's damaged inside, like the characters of modernist fiction. So in that sense, his psychological damage, the fact that he is damaged, that puts him in the modernist section of heroes or characters. As someone who is a hard worker, tough, honest, that reflects the 19th century Victorian culture. The world has defeated him. Marlowe is defeated, has defeated him in some fundamental way, and he is weary, he's skeptical, he's suspicious, he's cynical. Marlowe also shifts between the role of the intellectual and the role of the working tough, right? He works hard. He's like someone who doesn't sit and just like pontificate. He's the working hard. But he's also someone who reflects on his experiences and tries to understand his environment. And remember, we said, when we discussed the difference between modernism and realism, how in modernism the self is problematic, it's complex, right? The self is in crisis, whereas in realist fiction the self is clear, the self is good, the self is coherent, the self is... But in modernist fiction we see that the self is completely decomposed. It doesn't have a center, it's lost, it's defeated, right? And it's also damaged inside. It finds it difficult to relate to its own society. Like Marlowe, Marlowe doesn't manage, he can't fit within his society. He can't fit in London, he can't fit in Brussels, he can't fit in Africa with the company. The only person he likes in the company is Kurtz in the end. And the people that he hates most in Africa are the white Europeans. So Marlowe is a broken and damaged character who combines characteristics of the working tough and characteristics of the intellectual. We see in him the baggage and the background of the Victorian era, but we see in him also the damaged self, the decomposed self, the alienated self of 20th century modernist fiction. In the end, Marlowe sides with Kurtz against the company, but he does not side with the Africans, you should notice. He doesn't side with the Africans, he sides with Kurtz. And when he meets Kurtz's fiancée, he prefers not to tell her the truth. When she asked him what was Kurtz's final words, he didn't tell her it was the horror, which is a damning expression, a damning judgment, final judgment on the whole enterprise of colonization in Africa. When she asks him what were Kurtz's last words, he says that they were your name. He prefers to keep her living in fiction. And she doesn't just, I mean, this is not just his attitude to her, but this is, in a way, what Marlowe does with his experience. When he comes back, he says the worst of it all is the fact that you find that you have nothing to say, right? You have nothing to say to people when they ask you, how was it? How is things in Africa? All he's seen, all the horrors and mass murders that he's seen, he cannot talk about it. He doesn't find the words. He doesn't find the expressions to explain it to people, because people are living in their bubble. Just like Kurtz's fiancée, she's living in her own romantic bubble, that Kurtz is a nice man, that he's doing good work in Africa. So he cannot find the words to tell her what Kurtz was doing, and he decides to lie to her in the end and tell her that Kurtz's final words were your name, and he keeps her living in her fantasy world. He keeps his own society living in their own fantasy world. The second important character we have is Kurtz. Kurtz is, in a way, resembles an archetypal character. An archetypal character is a character that's, you know, represents like, you know, like some kind of like, you know, hundreds of years type of person, someone that like reflects some human characteristics that have existed for like 1,000 years. And Kurtz resembles the archetypal evil genius. He is evil and he is genius. He's highly gifted, but he's highly gifted and well-educated and strong and resourceful and everything, but he ultimately degenerates. He becomes a degenerate individual whose fall becomes legendary. Kurtz is related to figures, we can compare him to figures like Faustus in European literature, to Satan in Milton's Paradise Lost, or we can compare him also to Ahab in Moby Dick, or to Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights. Like these characters, he is significant both for his style and eloquence, but also for his grandiose, almost megalomaniac scheming and the destruction that he wreaks on his environment. Kurtz can be criticized in the same terms that Heart of Darkness is sometimes criticized. His style entirely overrules substance. Heart of Darkness is beautiful in its style, but just like Kurtz, has very impressive styles, but in the end the substance of Kurtz is horror and destruction and murder, and the substance of Heart of Darkness is racism and disrespect to the Africans. And in a way, both of them provide, both Heart of Darkness and Kurtz, in their hollowness, because they're hollow, they don't have substance, they just have style. And in that sense, they both provide a justification for amorality and a justification for evil and for destruction and for mass murder. Kurtz is utterly lacking in substance, as we said. Marlowe refers to Kurtz often as hollow. He's hollow, he's empty. It shows Kurtz's ability to function as, in a way, he is a choice of nightmares for Marlowe. Marlowe does not find any dreams in Africa he can embrace. He just finds nightmares. He finds the nightmare of the company, the nightmare of the jungle, and the nightmare of Kurtz. And he chooses Kurtz's nightmare as a lesser evil. So Kurtz represents, in the end, a choice of nightmare for Marlowe. Kurtz also provides Marlowe with a set of paradoxes that, you know, a set of paradoxes that allow Marlowe to evaluate himself. Marlowe uses these paradoxes to reflect and evaluate himself and the company's men and the work that they're doing in Africa. Kurtz is not much a fully realized individual. He's not a fully realized individual. I mean, we just hear of him throughout the novel, and when we finally meet him, it's only for, he only has a few lines to say, that's all. So he doesn't even talk much. So he's not a fully realized individual, as much as a series of images constructed by others for their own use. So each one constructs his own image of Kurtz. As Marlowe's visit with Kurtz's cousin, in the end, towards the end of the novel, when Marlowe visits with Kurtz's cousin, the Belgian journalist, and then he visits with his fiancée, these visits demonstrate that those people in Europe too, they also each one had their own image of Kurtz. Kurtz was a multi-layered character in a way that every person, the company in Africa, the cousin in Europe, the fiancé, had constructed their own image of Kurtz. To his cousin, he was a great musician. To the journalist, he was a brilliant politician and leader of men. To his fiancée, Kurtz was a great humanitarian and a genius. We can also talk about some of the symbols. Heart of Darkness is highly symbolical, and some of the symbols that are used are extremely powerful. The first one is the symbol of darkness, or the theme of darkness, if you want. It's important enough that it's part of the title, Heart of Darkness, but it is difficult to say what exactly it means, because it's used extensively, it's used a lot, and therefore it means a lot. It's used as a metaphorical image, as a symbol throughout the novel, which gives it a conglomeration of meaning. A lot of meanings are attached to it. Almost everything in the book is cloaked in darkness. Africa, England, Brussels, all of them are cloaked and described as gloomy and somehow dark at one point or another. Darkness is most often used metaphorically. Darkness is the inability to see. The inability to see. This may sound simple in the beginning when you hear it, I can't see, it's dark. But think about it as a description of the human condition, right? As a description, this is how the book describes the human condition. The human condition is in a position of inability to see. It's unable to see. And it will prove to have profound implications. That has profound implications and consequences. Failing to see mass murder, for example, failing to see that exploitation and destruction of Africa is not humanitarian work, and failing to see that Africans are human beings are very grave and consequential facts. When you fail to see destruction and you think it's humanitarian work, when you fail to see mass murder and you think this is enlightenment, this is extremely dangerous, and this would have extremely dangerous implications too. Another important symbol in Heart of Darkness is the symbol of the fog. The fog is similar to darkness too. Fog not only obscures vision, but it distorts. It gives the person just enough information to begin making decisions. You would think, well, that looks like a road there, that looks like the river there, but no way, it doesn't give you a possibility to judge with accuracy, right? Your whatever judgments you make are not certain, they're not accurate, because the fog not just obscures, it also distorts. Marlowe's steamer is caught in a fog when he gets closer to the inner station. What that means is that he has no idea where he is going, and no idea whether further ahead there is death or open water that he can sail on. A third important symbol is the symbol of the white sepulchre. This is a word that's used to describe the city in Belgium where Marlowe goes to sign his contract. It's also, we are told, it's the seat, the headquarters of the company. Most likely, by all, you know, indications, the white sepulchre is Brussels, the Belgian capital, where the company's headquarters are located. A sepulchre, when we say a sepulchre, it implies death, confinement. So Brussels is described as a white sepulchre. It's white death. And indeed, Europe is the origin of the colonial enterprise. That's the source of the colonial enterprise. And that brings death to white man and to their colonial subject. It's death for white people, it's death of their humanity. Inside, their humanity dies, because when you do so much horror and evil to other people, you die inside. But it's also death to their colonial subjects in Africa. The white sepulchre is also governed by ideologies that both enable cruelty, dehumanization, and evil, and prohibit change, right? The phrase whited sepulchre comes from, the origin of the phrase comes from the Bible, from the biblical book of Matthew. In the passage, Matthew describes white sepulchres as something beautiful on the outskirts, but containing horrors within, embodies the bodies of the dead. So the white sepulchres in the Bible are described as beautiful, beautiful on the outside, but inside they contain horrors within, the bodies of the dead. Thus, the image is appropriate for Brussels, given the hypocritical Belgian rhetoric about imperialism as being a mission to civilize Africa. Another very important symbol, of course, is the river. The river, both, especially the Congo, but also the Thames to some instance, because we start with the discussion of colonialism on the Thames, right, which connects us to ancient colonization when the Romans come to Britain to occupy Britain and colonize it. But the most important river in the novel is, of course, the Congo River. It's the key to Africa. For all Europeans, the Congo is the key. That's how you get in. It allows the Europeans access to the center of the continent without having to physically cross it. They don't need to physically cross the continent. They can just enter through the Congo River and they find themselves in the continent, able to, you know, reach any part of it. In other words, it allows the white man to remain always separate or outside. They go into Africa, but they're still outside. They haven't gone inside Africa yet. This river also seems to want to expel Europeans from Africa altogether. Its current, the current of the river, makes travel upriver very slow and difficult, but the flow of water makes travel downriver back towards civilization, like when Marlowe picks up Kurtz and turns back to go back. That part of the travel is very fast, because the river, in a way, it's as if the river wants the Europeans to leave fast. So it speeds the water for them, but it's very hard to get in, to travel upriver. Marlowe's struggle with the river as he travels upstream towards Kurtz reflects his struggle to understand the situation in which he has found himself. The ease with which he journeys back downstream, on the other hand, mirrors his acquiescence to Kurtz and his choice of nightmare. These are some of the most important symbols and characters of Heart of Darkness. I hope you have enjoyed this program on the modern novel and found it useful, and I wish you the very best in your future education. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa ta'ala wa barakatuh.